What's up, random people of the internet? So I decided that today I was going to add futures, not to necessarily trade, but to watch and possibly trade in the future. So there's already a few things that I noticed that are kind of different than in forex. But before I get into this, I want to actually go through the things of last night. So we have Euro CAD right now. We wanted it to push up and then push down out of this area. It's currently doing that, but I really want it to break structure on the 4 hour before I consider hopping in. So for now, I'm just waiting on this trade. This one did pretty much what I expected it to do. It didn't quite come back, but if you wanted to, you could count this as the break, it coming back here and then pushing. So it would have done this. I would have just done it before, like this time. I was hoping that maybe it pushed down here, had another pullback, and then we could hop in. But right now, it's just hanging out in the middle of the price. This one, not really doing much. Thinking it might come here. Could even potentially come here. Something I would be weary about if it came here is just how far it had fallen. But something like this, just to take it up to there, would be fine. It isn't doing a whole lot. And also, if you look, you go back, this is it. This was the lowest point, all-time low for price, which is why I would like to see a nice little retracement and then a nice little push up for it to start to fill price in from how much it's fallen. And then there were these. This one's kind of the same thing as GBP, JPY. You'll notice that this already kind of went up because we weren't here yet. We were up here. So this went up, tapped, pushed down, all very nicely. So I could see it coming down here, pushing, and then we could go to this zone or even all the way down here. One thing that I will say about it is that this little candlestick could count as its pullback or tap in this area, and it could just keep pushing. So I'll keep an eye on this to see if it makes this move, but just so you recall, this is what I was looking for at first. Now that it's done that, past that, move this guy down, and we're just kind of waiting on something like that to happen. AUD USD, waiting for it to come back here and push up. Potentially, this could be its pullback right here, and it could continue to push up from there. We do see that it's been very bullish, but personally, I just wouldn't take a trade from there. I understand it's a key level. I don't want to take a trade from there, so. And then here, kind of the same thing. I would like for this to push up more, but it to come back here, give me a nice little retest, and then take that. So, honestly, this is moving higher up for me, and the reason for that is price was, at an all-time low, so we're looking to fill some of this in, maybe even come up there, but we can't guarantee that's going to happen, right? But when price gets to, sort of an all-time low, you can have a lean towards it turning around and going back up to the higher part, if that makes any sense. That's just how I've learned it. Maybe that's wrong, but that's how I've learned it, so that's what I'm going to go with. So with that, again, looking for it to come above. I would like to see it break this area right here. Then it's going to confirm this inverted head and shoulders for me. Not the best shoulder, but is a shoulder nonetheless. And then hop in and ready to go, honestly. Let's see. So, yeah, the weekly is still bearish. You probably could put a zone in there somewhere. Just to me, it doesn't look too crispy. I don't really want to worry about it all that much. It also had rejection from down here. And again, it was an all-time low. So it is potential that it'll go back down and continue its bearish trend. But I am going to go ahead and believe in this daily in H4. So real quick, I realize I'm saying all-time low. Price wasn't exactly at an all-time low, but it just hadn't been that low in a very long time. And also, it usually just doesn't get that low when you look back at price. So that's kind of what I meant when I said all-time low, even though it wasn't actually an all-time low. So yeah, looking for something like this, come back, push up, and hopefully, we get a trade from there. I'm going to move it up, actually. Okay. And then we had a few to watch, and I actually added one this morning. This was just to see, hey, will it come back here and push up? Maybe, maybe not. Currently, it's not doing that. And then this one I've added to watch. There's too many zones, for me in this area. It's ugly, it's gross, but maybe it'll come down here, push up and push down, and depending on how price action looks, maybe I hop in, maybe I don't. The good thing is that currently this is bearish, so you know that helps out. We do have a weekly area that we sort of rejected from, and that's really kind of what I wouldn't like, but considering both are downtrends, it should just push through at least to like right here. So again, this is just me documenting my trading journey. Please, if you see this video, don't be like, oh my God, let me take these trades. Don't. I'm learning and I want to document my learning. I want to just learn how to do things. But yeah, so. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and hop into the futures portion of this. And really, I can be honest with you, NASDAQ, gold, and the S&P 500 are kind of in an area where price hasn't been. So it's like the S&P 500 we're looking at right now, we can see that price has been in this area, but once it gets above here, there's not really price action to base anything off of. So yeah, I do think it can come down here and potentially bounce up. But what I would really like to see is this thing come down and just start making bearish structure. This feels more like a hope and a dream than anything else because all the time frames, this is accurate for this one, all the time frames are currently bullish. So since all the time frames are currently bullish, they're probably going to keep pushing up. But I really just don't see a point in trading it in this area because historically there isn't a lot of price action to go off of. Gold is the same way, but more extreme. Gold is all the way up here. So when we look at it on the weekly, we see that it's been pushing. Usually when something would push like that, or with it being at an all-time high, I would think, oh, okay, there needs to be a retracement. Example here, pushing. Okay, there's a retracement. It continues to push, so on and so forth. However, we can see that in this area, it did that. And yes, in these little areas, it's done that. But a lot of the times, it's just been pushing and consolidating a bit, pushing and then pushing. So, like, yeah, we got a nice solid pullback here, but we can't guarantee that a solid pullback is going to come. So, looking at this, going down to the daily, I can make some zones, but other than that, there's not a whole lot. The daily is bearish, though, which is something that I found interesting. And with the H4 being bearish and having this H4 level, I think if we came under here, pushed under here, there'd be a lot of potential to push down because of, you know, how much we've been pushing up and how many gaps there are on the weekly. But you have to remember that the retracement hasn't always been a great retracement. So, yeah, possible, but I don't know that I would necessarily hop in. It would depend on what price action looked at the time of entry. And then finally for this round, NASDAQ. So NASDAQ, when you go to the weekly, we see it's just been kind of pushing. NASDAQ has been a little bit more responsive when it comes to pullbacks compared to like gold, but still there's not a whole lot of price action in this area where price is actually sitting. We go down here, we move to the daily where we can see more price action, and yeah, everything's bullish, so it makes sense to pull back here and continue to push up. But again, you're just pushing into no man's land. At that point as well, the H4 will have turned bearish, but it's very easy compared to the daily or the weekly for the H4 to turn back to bullish before hopping into a trade. So these things are possible, and I will continue to look at them, continue to watch them, see, you know, how they could be traded. But right now, everything is just super high, and there's not necessarily a lot of price action to back up these things. Obviously, there's more price action than some, but So then the next three that I have is silver, crude oil, and platinum. Silver, I personally think is kind of ugly. We go to the weekly, we see that, okay, it has a nice key level right here, so there's potential for it to come back and push up. My only thing about that is that then this daily is going to turn bearish, and with the daily turning bearish, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for it to be bullish, and I would want it to be bullish if I was going to take that trade like that. However, everything currently stands as bullish, so it's possible that it just comes back here and then continues up. That's kind of ugly price action to me, but it's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to do what it wants to, and that's why if I don't like it, I just don't take a trade. And now we're to platinum, and platinum, I actually want to point out that it had a trade available. So what I want from platinum is something that it's kind of already did, but I would want it in a more certain way. And the reason for that is this. Platinum is pushing down. I like the way it broke under the zone. It could pull back here and push down. I would love that as a trade. We go to the weekly. We see that the weekly is bullish. Okay, so we're trying to... It's kind of a counter trend trade. Like, it's counter trend to the weekly, but the daily and the H4s still have that possibility. The weekly has a structure point right here. That's fine. This is kind of an area where we would be a little bit weary of this thing possibly turning around. So as you can see, it's right on top of this daily line. So this is where we would want our TP to be, because after that, no telling what happens. We go down to the H4 and we see that this kind of already happened, right? We already had this little pullback. If I go up here to the daily and I put a line right here where there was actually, decent price action, I could extend my zone to this point if I wanted to. And I go back to the H4, I see it perfectly tapped, meaning I could have hopped in right here. Now, when I go down to an area that I would consider taking entry from, I look to see where would I have possibly put my limit at. And I go to about right here, and I think, yeah, I'd probably put my limit there. If I pull this thing down to the TP, this is only 1.66. Now, this comes above the zone. If we wanted it, perfectly above the zone, we have 2.14. 2.14 isn't bad. 1 to 2 is pretty solid. Really, you only have to be right like 50% of the time, and you're going to be profitable with a 1 to 2. Personally, it's not what I want. So in order for me to modify this, I would have to consider something like this. Obviously, in this instance, it did work. And then you have, the possibility of a 5.68. And this instant, it did work. What are we at? Yeah, we have made it to a 1 to 3. But I can't guarantee that that's going to work every instance. So me, personally, if I were to have taken this, I probably would have done something like that. It only goes to a 2.76, so then I would have to decide, is 2.76 close enough to a 1 to 3 for me or no? Personally, I do not believe that I would take this trade because, for two reasons. One, where I drew the initial zone, it did not tap. Yes, I could have included this part in my zone. Maybe I was being a little too strict when I was drawing these zones, but because of that, I wouldn't want to take it. The second reason is because with the stop loss that I would want, it would not hit a 1 to 3. And so personally, I wouldn't take it. And honestly, the third reason is because this setup here happened at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm probably not awake. And sometimes I do wake up in the middle of the night and I do take a little peek at the markets to see if there's any place to enter because I can recognize London session. But realistically, like today, I was not awake at that time. I was asleep. So I know I wouldn't have hopped in. Of course, it gives me time all the way till about, we'll say 4:30. I still probably would not have gotten in that. I wouldn't have been awake. 5:30 is really the earliest time that I might have seen that. So, yeah. But it is good to know. It is a nice little tidbit to keep in the back of my mind that me putting it above this zone would have made it to a 1 to 3 had I wanted to take that. You also have to recognize these rejection candlesticks on the H4. They're beautiful. But yeah, what I'd want to see is for this to come back, it would need to play around a little bit for me. Why? Because when it comes back here, this H4, it's going to be bullish. And I would like my H4 to be bearish. So it'd have to play around a little bit. Once it turns bearish again, I'm thinking about getting in it. So for the final future thing that I'm looking at, it's crude oil. This is something that I have never looked at, never traded before. That's the same with platinum. I've never looked at, never traded crude oil before, never traded platinum before. And I've looked at silver before, but I've never traded it. And I didn't look at it very much. I have traded the NASDAQ and the gold most often. The S&P 500, I've looked at, I've dabbled in trading with, but I haven't done a whole lot with it. So to be honest with you, NASDAQ and gold, I'm most familiar with. And now I'm branching out to other things. And I have not traded any of the futures in this way. So I know like with this stuff down here, I know contracts flip over and I need to be mindful of that. But other than that, I have not traded futures in this way. I've not swing traded futures is what I should say. So for the final thing that we're looking at, it's crude oil. What I will say is I'm not a fan of this candlestick. I know sometimes like this can be thought of as, oh, okay, we're going to fill in that candlestick, but I still think of it as a rejection candlestick. Either way, I'm not a fan. But here's the weekly. This is a pretty solid area on the weekly. We pull back, obviously, weekly is bullish. We pull back, we have some structure points right there, so I do love to see that. I come over here to the daily. Not as much of a fan, but I can get on board, right? So the daily has been pushing down for a second, obviously, to get back to this area or key level that we're looking to take that trade from. Again, I'm not actually trading, but I'm watching to see where I could possibly enter and see how well my strategy works on these items. So pushes up and makes the daily bullish. Great, love to see it. Now we just need to see a push to the upside. So what I would like to see is, since we are currently trading under, it would be very easy for price to do something like this. Now, it would be going against trend, but that's not necessarily unheard of. At some point, you have to change trend. So what I want to see is that price pushes up past this weekly and daily level and kind of gives me a little retest and then enter from there. Of course, keeping the daily bullish, keeping the weekly bullish, and then at that point, we would have a 4 hour that's bullish, and it would be the perfect time for me to enter. So I do like this trade idea. Again, I'm learning. This is me literally just documenting my journey, learning, seeing how things goes. But this is the trade idea that I like for now. So we'll see. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you're a random stranger, if you're just myself reviewing, hopefully this made sense. And if not, hopefully I get better so I'm more efficient. And yeah, but anyway, I'll catch y'all on Sunday.